Good question. We appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
No problem.
Those communications between NASA astronaut Christina Cook and Canadian Space Agency astronaut and today's Capcom, or capsule communicator, the one person here speaking with the crew right now, that is Jenny Gibbons. She is an Artemis II backup crew member here in Mission Control Houston. We are now 4 days, 18 hours, and 30 minutes into the flight of Orion for Artemis II. The Artemis II crew inside Orion lifted off atop the Space Launch System rocket on Wednesday, April 1st from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Those 4 crew members are the first to live and work inside the Orion spacecraft, which they have named Integrity, and have been busy conducting meticulously timelined events. It was a beautiful ascent from Kennedy Space Center. One of those early events was the proximity operations demonstration, during which NASA astronaut Victor Glover, the Artemis II pilot, manually flew Orion after having just detached from the interim cryogenic propulsion stage as if they intended to dock. This was practice for future Artemis missions, during which astronauts in Orion will dock with the lunar lander that will take them to the surface of the moon. About 24 hours after launch, 25 hours actually, Orion then conducted TLI, the translunar injection burn. This 5-minute, 50-second burn committed Orion to departing high Earth orbit and set us up for today's flyby. That translunar injection burn also served as the spacecraft's deorbit burn. It slingshots Orion around the moon and sends the crew on a free return trajectory, with splashdown approximately 7:07 p.m. Central on Friday, April 10th. Last night on Flight Day 5, the crew entered the lunar sphere of influence, the point at which the pull of the moon's gravity will become stronger than the pull of Earth's. We've also been getting some great views inside the cabin of the crew members living daily life, from working out to eating, taking photos, and making memories together. But they've also been taking some beautiful views of our home planet and of the moon, and we expect many, many more of those following today's activities. These live views back inside the cabin of Orion, but before we get into flyby, let's take a minute to get reacquainted with our crew. Reed Wiseman is the Artemis II commander and a Baltimore native. He's been in space once before.
I think there was going to be some families heading into the viewing room today. If they end up showing up, could you just give us a heads up when they're there so we can just wave to them on the camera?
Absolutely.
And that was the voice of Reed Wiseman. He has been in space once before as a flight engineer.
And if they don't come, you could just lie to us and tell us that they're there. That'd be great, thanks.
We'll keep that in mind, too.
And
I'm sure they'll be here.
Wiseman also has a great sense of humor. He was aboard the International Space Station from May through November 2014 as part of Expedition 41. This was a 165-day mission during which he and his crewmates completed more than 300 science experiments in areas like human physiology, medicine, science, earth science, and astrophysics. They set a milestone for station science by completing a record 82 research hours in a single week. He also served as chief of NASA's astronaut office from December 2020 to November 2022, and here on Earth he has 2 daughters. The Artemis II pilot is Victor Glover, selected as an astronaut in 2013, when at the time he was serving as a legislative fellow in the United States Senate. His first trip to space was in November 2020, when he launched as a pilot of NASA's SpaceX Crew 1 mission. That was the first operational mission of NASA's Commercial Crew Program, which resumed launching American rockets from American soil to the International Space Station since the end of the shuttle program. Victor is a U.S. Navy captain and naval aviator who served as a test pilot pilot, racking up more than 3,500 flight hours in more than 40 different aircraft. He also became the first person to pilot Orion the other day when we saw the Prox Ops demonstration shortly after launch. He and his wife have 4 children. Mission Specialist Christina Cook is a native of Grand Rapids, Michigan. She was selected to the Astronaut Corps in 2013, the same class as Victor Glover. She served as flight engineer on the International Space Station from March 2019 to February 2020. During that time, Cook set a record for the longest single spaceflight by a woman with a total of 328 consecutive days in space. She also participated in the first ever all-female spacewalk with her friend and colleague, Jessica Meir, now living and working aboard the International Space Station yet again. Before becoming an astronaut, Christina helped build space science instruments and led scientific fieldwork in some of the most remote environments on the planet. Her hobbies include surfing, rock climbing, community service, yoga, travel, and photography, and she is certainly getting a chance to do that. First-time flyer, Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen is flying to the moon as a mission specialist on the Artemis II mission. The London, Ontario native was selected as an astronaut in 2009. After that, he worked as Capcom at NASA's Mission Control Center here in Houston. Capcom stands for Capsule Communicator and is the single direct voice communicating with the astronauts in space. He also participated in training exercises like living on the ocean floor off the coast of Florida to simulate deep space exploration for 7 days. In 2017, he became the first Canadian to lead a NASA astronaut class, and he also enjoys getting out on a sailboat, rock climbing, and mountain biking. And he and his wife have 3 children. As you can see, the crew members have dimmed the cabin lights inside Orion. As they prepare for their lunar flyby, they'll be configuring the cabin as they'd like to have it to allow for proper positioning as they move about to and from the windows, taking photos of the moon. Dimming the lights also helps prevent reflections from inside Orion onto the windows. Ahead of this lunar flyby, let's dive in and explain what you can expect over the next several hours. The crew has about 6 hours allotted to make observations about the moon. Throughout the flyby, their activities have been precisely timelined. There are 5 blocks of time during which the crew will be observing the moon from Orion's windows. At any time, 2 members will be at the windows working in a pair. One crew member will be taking photos from window 2 with a blue shroud over the window. This can help prevent that glare or reflection from inside Orion. They have an 80 to 400 millimeter zoom lens to use. The other astronaut will be in window 3 using their portable computing device, you'll hear that referred to as PCD, to make annotations. Both of these crew members will make audio recordings of what they are seeing, and they'll wear headsets connected to those PCDs. Those audio recordings will be sent to the science team at a later date. We will not hear them live. The 2 crew members at the windows will swap roles and positions halfway through their timelined block. The other 2 crew members who won't be at the windows at that time will be serving in the background as support. One will be conducting the science sit reps, or situation reports. This is what we will hear live from the crew. They'll be calling down a few times each hour to discuss what they are observing. Those situation reports include how the crew is positioned, any missed targets, or anything unexpected they saw, lunar target descriptions, any hardware issues, and of course, their emotions and reactions as they fly by the moon. The other support crew member will take pictures of the astronauts at the windows and serve as camera support, providing new SD cards when needed. There's a 15-minute time frame between each observation block during which the 2 support members switch places with the crew making observations. Two views, both coming from Orion. There on the left, the inside of the spacecraft, and on the right, a view of our moon, the destination for today. During the lunar flyby today, Orion will provide astronauts with a full disk view of the lunar surface. They'll have a higher vantage point, much farther than Apollo's lunar orbits on average. And these astronauts can observe both holes and large-scale geologic features in a single view. And due to our April 1st launch date and current illumination conditions, the Artemis II astronauts have become the first humans to directly observe certain far-side regions of the moon with unaided eyes. Great, thank you. You ready? It's me. It's okay.
How do I, is it all?
We are now 36 minutes until we see the Integrity crew pass the Apollo 13 distance record. And joining me on console, I have Julianne Gross, the Artemis curation lead. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
We're very excited to have you. So can you tell me about your role as Artemis curation lead and what that entails?
Yeah, so for the overall Artemis campaign, I'm the Artemis lunar sample curation lead. That means I'm helping NASA to return the next set of lunar samples from the lunar surface. And for Artemis II specifically, I'm one of the science theme leads, and specifically I'm responsible, or the voice, for impacts, poles, and landing sites.
Fascinating. So what helped us select the targets that the crew is going to be photographing today?
So we had a plan coming in where we basically made a list of all the available targets during the April launch window, because before you launch, we wouldn't exactly be sure which targets would be visible. And so once we launched, we then were able to cut down on that list and prioritize our targets. And the 5 theme leads came together and really discussed and talked through which
Integrity, the long lens configured for lunar flyby.
which targets we could then see and prioritize. And so that made it into our plan. We worked then with timeline to make sure that all the targets are visible. Some targets are time dependent, like Earthset or Earthrise, and some targets will rotate out of view when integrity starts going around the moon. And so we put these in early so that the crew has a chance to describe those to us.
Fascinating. I cannot wait to hear what they have to say. So we just heard them say that their long lens is configured. That's very exciting. And for us, when we look at the moon from Earth, what features are we seeing that the crew will also fly by today?
Yeah, so I really hope that people on Earth who are in nighttime will look up into the moon tonight. The features that the crew will see that we can also currently see is Aristarchus Plateau. Grimaldi is another feature. They're going to be sort of on our limb. And then Oceanus Procellarum, that really dark, large area on the near side that we can see. The crew is going to see that in the beginning. The more they fly around, the less of that they will see. So those are targets we will hear them describe early on in the flyby.
Fascinating. Well, and the crew has been training for years for this day. And so we're going to hear them make a lot of calls about what they are seeing on the moon. And they're going to use a lot of interesting terms that I myself need some brushing up on. So could you walk us through a few of the things that we'll hear them use to describe the moon, like albedo, exosphere, ejecta, just some of those major terms we expect to hear from the crew?
Yeah, of course. Albedo is basically a term of a reflectiveness of the surface. And so high albedo usually for the moon means bright areas, and low albedo means like darker areas. And so when you look into the night sky, you can see the high albedo areas are the white parts and the low albedo ones are the darker areas. Ejecta is when you have an impact and it ejects or throws out material that then ends up on the surface, and you can see that as sort of rays or ray systems. So you might hear them describe, oh, I can see Ohm, for example, with its rays. It has an asymmetric rays coming out, and so we're excited to hear them describe that. You might hopefully hear stuff about color or color hues, and so if they can see any changes in those color hues from like white to gray to maybe brownish, we're excited to hear about that. Exosphere is the almost no existing atmosphere of the moon. It's barely there. But there is dust on the lunar surface that can get lofted up through electrostatic forces. And when the sun goes behind the moon, it can scatter forward on those dust particles and sort of like create a little glow on the horizon. And so we're really excited to see if the crew can actually see that.
This is so exciting. Thank you so much for walking through all of that with us. Julian Gross, Artemis Curation Lead, we really appreciate you joining us here today, and good luck to your team.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
We are now MET 4 days, 18 hours, and 49 minutes into the flight of Orion. This view of the moon from the Orion spacecraft as we get closer and closer. We're live here in Artemis Mission Control at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, just about 32 minutes away until the crew surpasses the record set by Apollo 13 as the farthest astronauts to ever leave Earth. This view coming from a camera mounted on the tip of one of Orion's 4 solar arrays. Each array has a camera on its tip, and so we anticipate getting views throughout the lunar flyby. Of course, except during the point of loss of signal when the spacecraft flies behind the moon. Inside the cabin, the crew are configuring the inside of Orion for today's flyby, making sure they have everything just where they want it to help them take the pictures that they are aiming for the science team here on the ground. Coming up in just a few minutes, we will have a pre-lunar flyby conference. During that Lunar Flyby Science Crew Conference, our science officer here on console, Kelsey Young, will be speaking directly with the crew members about their targets, about their goals for today, what they expect to see, and what we are hoping to hear from them. We have a lot of milestones coming up today, so make sure you don't miss them. The first coming up again at 1:56 p.m. Eastern Time, the crew will pass the distance from Earth record set by Apollo 13 in 1970. At 2:45 p.m., lunar flyby officially begins. The crew will have that time on their schedules to begin photographing and providing audio recordings of what they are seeing on the moon. At 7:02 p.m., Orion will make its closest approach to the moon, approximately 4,070 miles away. Of course, all of these numbers are going to have to be confirmed following the flyby. These are estimates, and we are working with orbital mechanics. At 7:07 p.m., Orion reaches its